Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wrong to Strong Chicago. I'm your host. My name's Omar Calvillo, and tonight I have my guest here. His name's Harry Peña. I met this brother through Ronnie Carrasquillo. I forget if he asked you to reach out to me or for me to reach out to you. I forgot how that went, but anyways, we were able to connect. And we were talking a little bit before. There's been a lot of divine connections. I believe that God's been putting people in each other's paths for a reason that only He knows. But like I was telling a brother, I feels like like He's building an army in this season. I don't know why, but that's what I've been seeing. But welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it, and welcome everybody. My hope and prayer today is that somebody will be impacted about this conversation, and that we will just begin to move.
Amen, brother. Yeah, so we usually like to start at the beginning, brother. You know, like all the guests that come here. I believe that the childhood plays like a big role. Like it's important to share about the childhood, those younger years, those formative years. I guess we could call them, because that usually when you see somebody when they're older, you understand what made them the way that they are.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, brother, if you could share, like, where did you grow up at? What city, what maybe neighborhood, and then if you could describe it for those that never been there.
Oh yeah. Thank you for having me, brother.
Oh
First
yeah,
and
yeah,
foremost,
welcome. Yeah,
I want to thank God for this opportunity. So I came out of the roughly around the Humble Park area. But my upbringing was more in the Wicker Park. That's where everything happened as a youth. As a child, and just being able to, uh, just being alive today, in spite of, what we talked about our youth and the things that have happened to us. I always say this: um, we're all books. Every book has an intro, and that intro is the beginning of the story. And some of us are looked at from towards the ending of our story. And so they're only reading the back end. But they really don't understand the intro and the first chapter, second chapter. And uh, so for me, everything started when I was 5 years old.
okay.
I can recall it was um, a beautiful Saturday morning, May 7th, 1967. Okay, I just told my age, but don't think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Listen, come on, we're gonna humble ourselves. Um, but yeah, my dad just he got up one morning this morning and he said, "Told my mom, get him ready. I'm taking him out." And it'll be the first time my father ever taken me anywhere. And then at that time there was five of us. So mom got me ready, took me up, and I got me a haircut, got some clothes on me, and he spiffied me out. And so he ended up taking me to his bar, and this is the bar that he frequented, um, and in the Wicker Park area. And um, so he put me on top of the bar, and told the bartender watch me, and he went to the back. Um, and coming back from the back end of the bar, he picked me up and he walked me towards the back and opened the back door. There's a cot. Now, mind you, as I'm going back, I'm looking towards the front. So when he opened the door and came in, I turned into the room. I could see that there was a cot and there was a woman, and she was on this cot, this bed. And my father just took me and he stood me up. And he said, "Today I'm going to make you a man." And I didn't understand what he was saying. So, but he unclothed me, and this woman was naked on the bed, and he picked me up and he put me on top of her, and she had her way with me, and I remember distinctly. I understand what happened then, now what happened then, but as a child I didn't. But there was a sharp, like a sharp object that went through my being, and I remember it because I started screaming, and it was an intense, like being tore open in my insides, And I remember he just jerked me up and he said, "That's not the way you do it." And he shook me and he slammed me to the chair and he said, "This is the way you do it." And he began to have intercourse with this woman. Well, in our culture, in Puerto Rico, in our generations, our forefathers, that's what our forefathers did to their sons. It was at 12 years old. I don't know what possessed my father to do this to me when I was 5 years old, but he did it in any way. But his story is, and we talked about it. His story was that's what his father did to him, and his father's fathers did to his father. And so it was this perversion that, for all intents and purposes, it trickled down through the generations. And I was the youngest at 5 years old, and I remember as he was putting my clothes on, and I'm crying. He picked me up and he walked me out to the front of the bar. He put his knee down on the ground. He looked at me. He says, "If you tell your mother, I'm gonna kill you." That's the first time I ever feared my father. Those are his words into my life, and I was scared, and I said, "No, papi, I'm not gonna say nothing," but in Spanish, of course, right? And that's when everything began in my life. That's where this hatred for my dad sprung up, because after that, it was just violence. My father was very abusive. He was a very violent man, and we felt the blunt of that, but more so my mom. My mom went through 30 something, 33, 34 years of terror with my dad, and that's because of his drinking. Because he drank, he was an alcoholic and did drugs, and that's what his life revolved around, drugs. Also, and so the one night, my first act of violence. I want to go to that. I want to go to
Okay.
that
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
my first act of violence, and then I'll go back to just a couple of years prior to that. But being raised up in a house of violence, when the scripture says you train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he gets older, he'll never depart from it.
Yeah.
Well, there are two spectrums to that. If you train a child to be a killer, he's going to be a killer.
Yeah.
If you train a child in a way that's morally right, the child is going to be upright. He's going to honor his mother and father. Well, it swung. It just so happened that it swung on the opposite side for me, and so seeing what my mom went through and the beatings and that, I was 8 years old, and this one night my father, he came into the room and he was drunk, and he woke my older brother and I up, and he said, "Come on out." And I said, "No." I'm still scared because I can smell the liquor on him.
How old were you? You said
I was at 8 years old.
8 years
At
old.
8
Yeah,
years
yes.
old at the
Okay.
time. And so he got up and he walked out the door. When he walked out the door, I got up and I went to the door, and I just pulled the door just slightly open. And I could see he was sitting on the table. My mom was getting him some food, and it was at that moment something was said to my. He said something to my mom, and my mom responded. My mom was an angel, humbled, a woman, very discreet, soft spoken.
Yeah.
And I don't know what she said to him, but in his fury, he flipped that table over and he went at my mom and he picked her up. I could see my mom face up towards the ceiling coming down, and he smashed her face down onto the floor, and he got on top of her like if he was riding a horse and pulled her hair back, and he took out his shoe and he began to beat her. That right there, when I look back at that moment, that's the moment that hatred and anger entered into me. And I remember I picked up the knife because serving him food, there was a knife probably the sharpest knife that we had in the house. And I grabbed the knife and I stabbed him. I hit him 3 times. He swung his arm back and he hit me, knocked me up against the wall, knocked me out. So I don't know how many hours it was that I got up and I had this knot on the side of my head, probably half the size of my head. That's how hard he hit me. And I know that I was unconscious for some time. So when I got up, I looked, and at the moment I was petrified, and I looked into the bedroom, and his body, half of his body was on the bed, and the other, like if he were praying, and there was blood everywhere. And I thought I had killed him because that was my intent. I didn't understand it then, but that was my intent. And so I went into the house looking for my mom. I couldn't find my mom. And it just so happened that I had gone into the living room, and in between the living room and the sofa, my mom was in the middle, in between. And I walked up to her, and I said, Mommy, you don't have to worry, Mommy. I killed them. And it was at that moment that she looked up and she said, don't say that. That's your father. And when I looked at her, I was like, and her entire face was swollen. I mean, he had broken her nose. He had broken her eye socket. To me, it was like she was disfigured. And at that night, she had a white bata on, and it was all bloody. And so it was that moment in time that where it changed my trajectory in life, compounded by what happened to me when I was 5. What he did, this was now. I was now, in essence, a 8-year-old who hated his father and would do anything to try to kill him. So let me go back now, because these two next events really set up hatred for mankind. That was hatred towards my father. And so I was 7 years old, and I was outside playing, and I'm a kid. And so there's this, we lived at that time, on Potomac and Damon. And this, Spanish lords were there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, warlords were there. And I tell you a little bit about that. And I just, on the 4th story, because there was an 8 unit, and we lived in the 1st floor rear. So the guy came down, and he said, "Did I want some candy?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a kid. Who doesn't want candy?"
Right.
And so he said, "Come on, follow me." Went upstairs, and he said, "Wait at the door." I said, "Okay." And he brought out these candy. It looked like what I recognize now to be mothballs, little white mothballs. And he gave it to me, and I took one, and I started eating it. And it seems like within a minute, I was already like this. And he snatched me. And it's like I had no control of my body. I was limp. And he threw me onto the bed. And I couldn't get up from the bed. I couldn't move my body. And I just blacked out. But he ends up raping me. That's my first encounter with that violent spirit, a perverted spirit. So he ends up raping me. And I remember I was sitting. He had brought me down. I don't know how he got me down because I was knocked out. And he sat me on the staircasing, and I just remember in my head, when I woke up, I was in pain, and I looked, and I was bloodied. So he hurt me, and now that became for me, it was a sense of you know, and this thing was inside of me now, and I was enraged, and so as a kid, I look back, and I look, how did I forget these things, right? And as a child, you know how to compartmentalize stuff, put stuff away, and it's easy because the innocence. And for me, I did that, and I remember saying to myself, I'm gonna get older. I'm gonna get older one day. And even towards my father, that's what my words with to everybody, especially I didn't have many male friends, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
But that violence, that anger, and then I was 8 years old. Now I'm 8 years old. This is before my mom. He did that to my mom. I was out. I was on the side of the house this time. I was playing, and that dude. So this un Latino, he came walking by, and he said, "Man, I got these $5. You want them?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I went to grab him, and he straight up snatched me up, and put me in a hold, and he threw me into this garage. He ends up raping me. So these are two instances in my life where now I had pure hatred for mankind. Didn't have many friends now. Didn't trust. I was a loner as a kid. But the acts of violence that I was preparing myself for. I mean, I hated cats. Don't know why, but I would light those guys. I would tie them up from the hinds, and I would put lighter fluid on them, and I'm lighting them up. I did dogs that way, cats that way, and I began to now cultivate this, what we would say, this violence that was in my heart, this rage, and give it form. Because as I grew up, I said, man, I can do this to these guys. And this is where that was leading. So now I'm 8 years old, and I'm on top of that, what my father did to my mom's, that set me on this course. From 8 years old, I remember my first day of school. Well, not the first day of school. My first encounter with a teacher that told me that you're stupid and that you will never amount to anything. And the reason why she said that, and it was between 7 to 9 years old. It was on that age. I don't recall exactly, but I could not understand for the life of me. I could not understand north, south, east, and west. I could not comprehend it. It was because I was already messed up.
Yeah,
I was already messed up. I mean, in light of the things that happened to me as a child, I'm still a child. I couldn't get it because mentally, I was in torment. Mentally, I was alive, I could say that, but dead.
yeah,
And I could not comprehend because the trauma that had occurred to me as a child. And that right there is what led me on a journey. I hated school. I mean, as I got older, slapping teachers. I mean, I started slapping teachers around. I was just sharing this with one of my brothers, Freddie. And I said to Freddie, listen, brother, as for myself, you're taught wrong. To do what's right is hard when you're taught what's wrong because it's how you're raised. And I said, the things that I've done in life, I thought it was okay because that's the way I was raised. So for me to hurt somebody, that was along the lines of what I was doing because I was hurt.
yeah.
Hurt people.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the childhood beginning. That's the intro, and into a life of a child who never had a chance. You see, when I say that they wanted to kill me, as exactly, at that time, God's hand was on me. In spite of what happened to me, God's hand was on me because I should have been dead. And one of those moments was at the hands of my father. And I think I was 9 years old, and my older brother was 10. And no, I was much younger than that because I still had my onesie on, little red onesie on, little bear on it. So it summoned 7 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, along those lines. Right. And my father came into the house and he said, hey, get up, and told my brother and I get up. We got up. And this is my first encounter with a gun. And my father, when we came out, my father was at the mesa, at the table, and he had this gun on. I'll never forget it. It was a 25 7-shot nickel-plated pearl handle. Pistol, or not a pistol, a pistol, yeah.
Yeah.
And he looked at my older brother and I, he said, today you die. And so my older brother and I started walking backwards. And where I found my mom at, in between the sofa and the television, that's where we ended up being. And as we're moving back, we can't go back. He hit the wall. So we slid down. And my father picks up his chair. He's coming right to us, and he's about 2 feet away from us. He just pointed a gun. I mean, right where you're at. 1.5 feet. And he points the gun. He goes, tuck, 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 tuck. He just let off 7 shots. At that moment, I can hear the gun, the bullets just going, ding, ding. But he's pointing the gun right at me, right in my face. And how does he miss? This is why I said, when God has his hands on you, no matter what man may try to do to you, when God's hand is on you, listen, We call them miracles. That's just God protecting his investment in the future. And that's what I was, an investment in the future for whatever he was going to do with me. Did that mean that I was going to be exempt from going through stuff? No, no. I mean, right after that, that's my first encounter with a pistol. First time I shot somebody, I was 10 years old. And this is how I began, you know. As a child, you know, I got initiated into, well, not initiated. I was a peewee, you know, and that's when I was on Potomac and Damon. So I was already around the element, and having those brothers, you know, embrace me because I never had a father, although he was there in body,
Right.
but he was not there.
No.
But those brothers, as I see it now, as a kid, you look up to them. You know, these are my brothers, you know. And so the gang life and that all came into play early on as a child.
Man, you said at the age of 10 going in there. And what was the difference from these guys and your father? You know what? Before we get there, now that day that you stabbed your father, what was the consequences of that? Like once your dad, I guess, got over the slum, you know, the drunkenness and seeing he was stabbed, was there any like repercussions towards you? Like,
No, he didn't put his hand on me. What he did tell me, well, no, that's not true. That's not true. So it was I don't know if it was a week later. He didn't say anything to me. First and foremost, for a week, 2 weeks later, he didn't say anything. And then one day, I had taken some food stamps from my mom, right? Because I wanted some candy, so I slid off. And as a kid, you know, I had another guy with me, and we went and got some candy. And well, my mom ended up telling my dad, and my father looked at me. And he said, "Come here." He said, "You take your mom's money?" And I said, "No." And it was so fast that when he hit me, I didn't see him. He lifted up his hand, and I just felt it. That's how fast it was. He knocked me to the ground, and he looked at me and he said, "You're a thief now. You'll be a thief. You get older and you go to prison for being a thief." Those were his words to me. So that was the repercussion, because he wanted to put his hands on me, but he knew that he was wrong. You don't do that to your kids. You don't do that to your wife, you know. And he couldn't look at me up to that moment, and that moment gave him opportunity to get with me, and he did. He put them paws on me, and yeah. So that was the repercussion.
right.
And he told me there was another event that occurred. This is where rejection entered into my life. The first time I experienced rejection was Father on a Christmas Day. I can't remember what year it was, 74, 75, something like that. And he brought toys for everybody. And he got the oldest all the way to the youngest. And I was the second oldest. So he gave my older brother a gift, and he kissed him, told him, "I love you." And he came to me, he says, "I give you nothing." I said, "Because you're going to try to kill me when you get older." And he passed me up. And then he went to my other siblings at the time. And I looked at him, and I was enraged, and I told him, "I don't need nothing from you." And I took off. That's the first time, my first attempt at running away. Tried to run away. Ran into the snow, come back in, get a whooping for that, you know. And I tried. By the time I was 12 years old, I was already out the house. You know, but that was life as a child, you know, and acting out in this anger and this violence, this rage that was inside of me, to no fault of mine.
Yeah.
You know, but when you have your innocence stolen, and you're broken at the hands of the one that's supposed to protect you, a father, you know, and it's not a surprise that at 15 I would already have a child, and that really set me back. That's what really started turning my life, because I always said that I would never be like him, and I didn't hit women, and that was another side of the spectrum. There were times that, you know, and I was a kid, you know, I see guys, you know, beating up on their girls, you know, their wives, and one older guy, man, I get upset, supercharged, you know, and, you know, A lot of dirt that I did, all the dirt. Let me put it that way. Everything that I've ever done in life, I did when I was alone. Because nobody could tell on me but me. And no one ever. How can you trick? I wasn't going to tell on myself.
Yeah.
And the one time I get involved, I lose my life. So the dirt that I did and the people that I hurt, I wanted to hurt them. I had a lust for wanting to hurt them. But that's how I was raised.
Yeah. Now, you know what? I want to ask you because I told you when you got here that I read a article, like a little bit, kind of a brief of your testimony. But something happened at the age of 12, I believe. That's when you attempted to do something. You want to tell that story?
Yeah. So remember I told you that 12 years old I left home.
Yeah.
That's the time when I was already out. So my relationship with my dad at that time, he would be chasing me down the street with a butcher knife or a ball bat, and then or I'll be chasing him with a ball bat or a butcher knife. At that time I didn't want to kill him, but I had access, and so. But this particular night, I remember it clearly. He had slapped my mom, and I told him, I said, "I'm getting older." I said, "This is the last time you can put your hands on my mom." And of course, that brought up upon him chasing me up at the house, and so this part. It was 1979. I'll never forget it. This was the day before New Year's Eve of '79, and I had a 38, and I shot the light out on this street, Ancona Street. At that time, we lived in Ancona and Ashland, and this is probably the smallest street that I've ever been on. You try to park two cars, you can barely get a car through there. That's how small it was. So this particular night, my dad, up to this moment, for weeks I had been watching my father, what avenues that he would take coming up, from the bar and whatnot. And what his routes, and I had it down packed. So this particular night, the day before New Year's Eve, I shot out the lamp, so it was dark, and it was right in the alley, in the street and the gangway that we used to use when we would do our dirt, and so that particular night I shot it out. The following New Year's Eve night, I waited for him, and he's coming down the street. And I remember I cocked the handle back because this was a revolver. And I'm looking. And I'm thinking, I'm going to finally kill this dude. And I was two with guys. And never forget, he comes about 60 to 80 feet away. And this is the first time I heard the voice of God. I didn't know it then. And the voice said to me, "Harry, don't do it. He's your father." And it seems like everything in my life paused in that one moment because I didn't register it. And I looked at the guy and said, "What did you say?" Because they're right, cars right, not 6 feet away from me. We didn't say nothing. And I looked, he's about maybe 20 feet. He's coming right to that. I'm about to pop him. Then I hear his voice again. "Son, don't do it. He's your father." And a bolt, it's like a bolt of fear or whatever, hit me across my head, and I jumped up and I took off running. That night, God saved my father from me taking his life, because sure enough, he was going to die that night. And I remember as I'm running, I turn back, I look back when I'm running, and he's running the opposite side. And that night, I was alone. And I couldn't comprehend what I heard. At that moment in time, I was like, am I going crazy? Where did that voice come from? And so my father was spared that night. But sure enough, I wanted to kill him. And the crazy thing is that one envisions, or at least I did, I envisioned how I was going to kill him. I was going to torture him before I killed him. Because I wanted him to see me and look into my eyes as I put him, because that's how I envisioned taking his life. And from that moment on, my life took a different turn because I didn't understand. because I didn't know God.
Yeah. No, could I ask you that? So you hear this, you feel that you said like a fear almost, but like growing up, was there any like God in your family on mom's side, dad? Like, was there any faith involved, like growing up for you?
So this is why I love my mom. My mom is no longer with us. She's with our father. But the only one to ever talk to us about morals, about good, about God, was my mom. And the strangest thing is this: is that, of course, as a child, you just don't understand. You can't concept, you don't have concept of what God is. What is that? I don't understand that. And I remember I would lay on top of the table, and I'd be like fascinated about what she was saying about God. And but that was it. So growing up, I mean, there was this church group. We used to call them. They were in the Blue Bus. We call it the Blue Bus Church, and
Okay.
they would Indiana church,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they would pick up all these kids. But I never heard the word of God. Going there, I still never heard the word of God because they didn't. They kept us in a different space from the church, and I didn't understand it. I
Okay.
went there to play. I went there to have
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
try to have a good time because I was a kid. So yeah, that's the only time. So knowing about God, no, there was a Bible, but that was my mom, and but she shared what she believed.
Okay. Right. So there may be some seeds there now. Going back to when you were 15, you said you had your first kid, and I believe you said when I was reading that it changed you, that moment like almost like changed your life in a sense, right?
Oh well, that's exactly what happened. Um, you know, when you're that young and you're pregnant, you still don't understand. You see, I realize today what I didn't realize then, of course, because I was still a child.
Right.
I was growing up into a man's body, yet still a child, because I thought like a child. At times, I acted like a child, and I spoke like a child. Like I'm 15 years old, but I'm a child trying to walk out a man's life, or at least to what I understood at that time. So for me, um, when my son came in and I held him, I was in shock. There no words to that. Even to today, when I look back at that moment and I'm looking at this baby, I didn't understand. I could not understand what was before me. But inside, I knew that it had changed me. And for the first time, I wanted to love something. And that's what changed me because I didn't know love. My mom, everybody knows mom's love. That's different. But when you're looking for love from that father figure and you don't get it, you don't really understand love from a man's perspective. Yeah. And for me, that was a defining moment because I looked at this baby and I felt something. I was not cold. It was warm. And I didn't understand that feeling. So I look back at it now. I know what it was. It was just the beginning of my birth process, and love.
No, that birth process, like, what do you mean by that? Like, God, or maybe because you felt dead like before that, or
Well, absolutely. When you're cold and you do things and you don't feel anything behind that. That's when I talk about dead men walking,
yeah.
and I'll use that term a lot. Dead men walking. Many of us were dead men walking.
Yes.
We just use a lot of things to try to fill the void, and either smoking weed, drinking, whatever, selling drugs, gang banging, whatever it was. Those are things to try to cover, to try to keep cover. Not keep to try to keep you from not feeling anything.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was, empty.
Gotcha. Okay, so you have your baby. How does your, because you mentioned, you're gang involved. Do you continue after your baby?
No.
How does your life look like as you're 16, 17, 18, like?
So it was at that time that and instinctively, I knew that I had to work.
You weren't working before? Okay.
No. The drug dealing, selling acid, selling weed, just started to sell cane. I mean, not heavy because I'm still a kid.
Yeah.
Cocaine is fairly new.
Okay.
At that time, and we're talking late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So it was not like it was really out there.
Right.
It was the beginning of it. And so, yeah, so that situation with my son, that really caused me to see, not only that I had to go to work, but I had now something to protect. And so I there were nights when, and I recall it instinctively. There were nights when I said, man, I don't need to be here. I need to go home. And I would leave. And there were nights we'd go do drive-bys, and I felt, at that moment, I felt like I shouldn't be there because I'm thinking about my son, and so I started to separate myself. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I started to pull away, start hanging out in the neighborhood. I started staying, in essence, being with my son more so that I wouldn't have to be out in the streets.
Right. Now, at this point, are you with the son's mom? Are you
Yes.
guys trying to have a relationship there? Like,
Yeah,
raise them
no,
together,
we're
Okay.
together. We're
Okay.
together, and I just knew that I had to work. For me, I had to work.
Yeah.
So working was difficult, or at least finding a job was difficult for me because nobody would give me a chance. And I don't know what it was about me as a kid, 14, 15 years old. I want to work.
Yeah.
But it was that nobody would give me an opportunity. And maybe it was because I was just 15 years old.
Yeah.
I should be in school, But at that age, I already had dropped out of school. I was kicked out of 8th grade, sent to high school because not that I, did the schoolwork. I didn't do no schoolwork. It kicked me out because I was
That age.
I was, they were tired of me beating up on their teachers and hanging out, and just acting like, some kid that didn't have no morals whatsoever. And that's what I was. I was that dude who was beating up on other kids, fighting other kids. Fighting was his passion. I got a lot of that when I was in grammar school. So I was in a fight. So, yeah.
Okay. So now going, now do you little by little get away from the gang life? Like, how does that look? And then was it easy for you, like, to leave, or?
You know what? When I look back at it, it was. I just. There were days that would go by and more days that go by, and I didn't care, because I wanted my son more than I wanted that. And that's how I got out. That's how I got out. Well, you never get out.
No.
You didn't get out. No, you don't get out. And that's how I got. I stepped away from the scene.
Okay.
And that's how I say it. I stepped away from the scene.
No, is there an incident that maybe draws you back onto the scene, like later on in life, or?
My brother Eric, never forget, he came running into the house. They just whooped him. Somebody just put their paws on him, and a group of guys over there in this one park. And I think he was seeing some girl, and at that time I was already strapped. So I got up and put my clothes on. Where was it at? And I ended up going, I'm headed over there. Now, mind you, my son's born. And
how old is he at the time? Your son?
He's
Well,
he's a year.
Okay.
He's a year now.
Yeah.
And so I'm 16 years old. And I remember I'm coming down, so I'm going to name streets. So I'm headed down Ohio Street, and I'm headed up to Superior. These cats are on Superior close to Walcott. And it was at that moment that I'm walking. I had a black leather with a hoodie on. And my black leather, I had removed the pockets. They slid right into my hoodie. And I had this 25, mind you. Remember the 25 7-shot nickel-plated pearl handle? That's what I had.
Your dad's?
My dad's gun. It was not his, of course, but it was one like his.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
you know, and that's the gun that I used. That's the gun that I had. And I remember that night, that day, it was already wintertime, so there was a lot of snow on the ground, and I'm walking, and you go into tunnel vision, and you begin to envision how you're going to do these guys. So I already had in mind how I was going to take these guys down, and so I'm coming up Wood Street, getting ready to make a left. I'm probably a house or 2 houses away from the corner or the bar that was right there. And I'm so in focused with what I'm going to do that unbeknownst to me, there had been a cop. We call him Walking Tall. This is this white cop. He was notorious for beating up gangbangers and whooping on us. And that's exactly what he did. So I heard a boom and I stopped. And I came to, I was like, and the cop had his gun. The detective had a gun out, a Latino and a white guy. And he put the gun out. I said, ah. And I had my hands out. I put my hands up. I put them out of my jacket. And he comes and I never forget it. The Latino grabbed me. And he passed me over into the Walking Tall. We call him Walking Tall. Because the guy had to have been 6'6", 6'7", white guy. You know, blonde hair, dirty blonde hair. I'll never forget him. He snatched me up from the back. And in essence, he just like lifted me up. And he smashed my face into the cop car, the narc car. And I just remember if I would not have just turned just a little bit, he probably would have smashed and broke my nose, right? So he smashed me, and then the Latino cop puts his hands in my leather, and then he didn't feel it, and he slid off into my hoodie. And he found the gun. The gun was already ready. I was ready. And he looked at me. I'll never forget the look on his face. Because when he stuck his hand in there and he pulled it out, he turned my face this way. And he looked, because he got me from my hair. He said, who did we just stop you from killing, huh? Who did we just stop you from killing? And he said, look, bro. He told his cop,
his
Walking Tall, look, he was about to go kill somebody. And now, of course, I'm not going to tell him myself. No, right. And he smashed my head against the car, and then they took me into the police car, and they took me to the alley home. And I visited alley home for pistols.
Okay.
Yeah, 2-3 times I was in alley home.
Man.
So that moment right there, that was fearful because I'm now in at the alley home on Hamilton Street, and I can't see my son. Man, I was hurting. It's like it was this thing, man. And I remember I was in the room by myself, and I'm crying. I'm crying, Father. I'm crying out to God. God, deliver, get me out of this. I want to see my son. You know, I'm not thinking the consequences of that pistol and what that can, cause me. I'm not thinking like that. I just reacted out in emotion towards protecting my brother. And anybody tell you about my family, I'm the protector of my family.
Okay. You were like, you said the second oldest, so that was already in you. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Like at this point, okay, so did you ever like do some time or you just in and out the juvie? Like
in and out the juvie. Yeah, okay. In and out the juvie. And I wisened up. When I was in the juvie because at that time, people don't know about the juvie was that at nighttime, the officers would pop doors. And it's like these officers would they'll get together and they'll put guys to fight.
No way.
Yeah, and that happened all the time. They put the guys to fight, especially in the shower stalls. Where they're outside of the camera systems and that, in the shower stalls, then you have to fight. Kids were in it. They never pulled me out, but I saw it. Man. I knew what was going on.
And would they just put like ops, like people from different gangs?
And they'll bet on it.
No way.
These cops were, hey, listen, man. Hey, come on, man. Those were rascals. Those dudes were rascals. Especially when we were juvies.
Man, that's way out. Okay, now going on in your story, I know like eventually later on you get drawn into something, even though you were trying, I think, chill out at this time, right, of your life. I don't know if you want to head into that story now or...
Well, then you get 19, 20 years old and the nightlife calls you.
Okay.
This is the nightclubs and that was my scene. Now I'm working. I'm working for the Board of Education. It just happened that I landed a job. I met a brother, and the brother said, man, I'm going to help you. And his father ended up getting me into the Board of Education. and I was a janitor. I'm 19 years old. I'm a janitor at Kelvin Park High School. I'm a janitor at these other high schools, and so I'm in my element.
Yeah.
I'm in my element, you know, and so it was during that time that I started going out to the nightlife, you know, and the nightclub, the women, and just I had met this filly. I was 24 years old now, and um, you know, I made enemies because you know I loved women at the time, you know, and didn't care who it was, you know, and pulling women from
Yeah.
that stupid stuff.
Yeah.
You know, not understanding that there's 4 billion women in the world. You know, I'm chasing after skirt that, you know, belong to others, and so I got myself into trouble. A couple of times I got myself into trouble. Guys want, and they even, you know, they lit off into me, and only by the grace of God, again, God has hands
Yeah.
on me, and let nobody take my life. Because there are moments in this walk, in this story that they had me left. They could have killed me, you know, and for whatever reason, even when I reflect back on it now, I know that it was God that kept them from doing that.
Amen. Amen. And it's okay. You're getting yourself in trouble with these women,
Uh,
but then eventually you get lured into something. I believe,
So,
right? There's
so yeah. So I had snapped my ankle and I was out of work. 6 weeks. I had, you know, fractured my right ankle, so I was on disability pay. Right, it was not what I'm accustomed to making at the time. In 1990, I'm making $20 an hour, $24 an hour is what I was making, and that's unheard of.
back
Back
then.
then, in the
That's a
90s,
lot.
that's a
Yeah.
lot of money. But when you don't have someone to train you on money, on how to you know, how to use money,
Right.
and for me it was just like that. But I was in the drug scene too, so I was dealing drugs still at the time. I was dealing drugs, and so I'm making money, I'm keeping money, but I'm spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I met this filly, and we were both young, and I had snapped this ankle while I was with her, and I needed to make some money because the lifestyle that I was living was not measuring up to the monies that I now had.
Right.
And so I got involved in this plan, and um, I'll never forget the moment. You know, we it was a crime that took the life of an individual. That's not how it was supposed to be. And it was, you know, it was a Brinks job, and there was supposed to be a whole lot of money. And for me, that's what I was thinking, the money. And um, but our brother ended up losing his life, and that night, and I lose mine. You know, don't want to go into it, you
Right.
know, but someone lost their life, and it's an individual that I think about every day. For the past 30 years, this individual, somewhere in my day, I think about him. I think about his family. I think about his children, you know, his mom and dad. And so it's part of what I do today,
Yeah.
and the work that I'm involved with now, um, you know, to help our people,
Yeah.
you know, come out of that, you know, because when you're alive, when you're dead, dead people don't mean nothing to
Right.
you. It's when you're alive, you know, when stuff happens to your life, and you look at individuals, and you begin to value life
Right.
because you have life in your hand. And that's what happened to me. My little one caused me to value life now because I saw how beautiful it was through him. So now my life is different. You know, I'm moving in a different space. And so that death, It caused me to lose my life, but it made me vulnerable. It opened me up to the value of life.
Yeah. You know, could I ask you something? I believe I know, like, going back, that incident with your dad when you were getting ready to take his life, you heard a voice, and if I'm not mistaken, in this incident when you guys were getting ready to do this, I believe you heard him again, right?
So we're on our way to this spot, and we're in the van, and it's one of those older vans. It's 1976 van. It's got the bubble in the back, and I can recall as there were no seats other than the front passenger and the driver's seat, and I'm sitting down up against the door, and I'm looking up at that bubble, and I can see the top of houses going by, and it was at that moment I heard the same voice that I heard when I was 12 years old. He says, "Son, don't do it. You'll be gone a long time." And at that moment, there was an anxiety that came over me, and estaba inquieto. I needed to get out. I didn't want to be in that van no more. But this, I couldn't run. I couldn't run like I ran when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And because we all had pistols, and all I remember was in my mind, I'm saying, I gotta get out. I gotta get out. I gotta get out of this. We get there, and nothing's right. Everything is wrong. There were individuals that were there that shouldn't be there, and I just remember telling the guys, "Let's go. This is not going to work. This is not going to work." And one of the guys said, "Man, we came to do a job. We're going to do it." And I said, "No, this is not going to work. Let's go." And I remember I sat back, and I sat back. You know, the gun was, in essence, you know, I had to change now positions. What I originally went to go do, I was no longer going to do. And the brother had pulled the gun out on me and said, "You came to do a job. You're going to do it." I said, "I'm not going to do it." And he had the gun right this smack in my face. This is the gun that was used to kill the individual. And so now I'm looking at the barrel. I got a 9mm on me, and I'm looking up at the dude, but I can see in his eyes. I can see that coldness, that darkness in his eyes, and I knew that in that moment that he was serious, that he would put that bullet in my head. Yeah. So I gave up my gun, and I threw my hands up. I said, "Man." And then plans changed. And now I would not be the first to enter into the spot. I would be the last one. And as these guys entered in, I went to go take off, but I heard the gunshot. Bah! I stopped, and then I just took off running. And the gun was, when I look back, one of the brothers had the gun. I come back. Enter into the spot, and I see this brother. He's laid out, and I'm in shock. I'm in total. I'm gone. That day, that moment was I was not in my body, and because all I can hear was, I couldn't hear anything. It was numb, and I was numb. My being was numb. But what I'm looking at is someone bleeding out, and if the cameras were working at that time, they would have caught everything that happened in that moment. They would have saw my actions, in that moment. And after that, a week later, they came and got me at my school because I worked at the school. Yeah. And so I was the third one down. And when they got me, and I knew I lost my life. The crazy thing is this: that entire week, I was going to work. I had my 9mm. I had a 9mm. I was walking with my 9mm, every day. And I said, man, they're not going to take my life. We're going to shoot it out. In my mind, I'm thinking, I know that the cops are coming. So we're going to get, they're going to, if they come to me, we're going to get it on. And that whole week went by. I had my pistol at the job. And the following Monday, I said, man, I'll leave the pistol home. Get to the job around 11 o'clock. Officer come walking through the door. I go for my gun. I don't have it. And that's the last day I saw the streets for 22 and a half years.
Wow. Man, so you go in there, now going obviously into prison. Do you like go straight to the gang? You're still like affiliated as you going in?
So,
how does that look?
That's funny. So mind you, what I didn't tell you about, my childhood, when I was 15 years old, I attempted suicide.
Okay.
Because there was a moment in my life that I didn't want to live no more, and I bear the scars of it. I tell the story today about trying to take my life because I didn't want to live no more. I was 15 years old and I was tired. Now my son was born, but it was something that happened. I don't recall what had happened, but I gave up. It was a moment that I gave up, slipped my wrist, and I'm bleeding out. My older brother came to because I was living alone with the mother of my son, with the three of us, and I just, I was done. And so it was my brother and a childhood friend, the only one of the only ones that I had. They broke down the door and they rushed me to the hospital, and I lived, of course, and God had His hand on me. And so I'm in the county jail now, and we're facing the death penalty. Coming through the door, we're facing the death penalty. And I remember I'm Division 6. And you've been to Division 6, they got the pillar. Right before you go down to the lower deck, you got the pillar right there, which is beautiful big bay window. It was on a Saturday. This is October 21st. 1991, and I'm in my mind. I'm thinking that they're going to kill me.
Oh, who?
The state.
Officers?
The state.
Oh, the state. Okay.
Yeah, because they were in my mind. I'm thinking they're going to kill me because they wanted to give us a death penalty. Because that's what we were facing coming in through the door. At least that's what the prosecutor wanted. And so I'm sitting there and I'm contemplating. I'm not going to let these people kill me. Now, mind you, I've already attempted to suicide. So for me to think about taking my life, I didn't think twice about it. I'm already imagining in my mind how I'm going to do it. And the shower stalls, they had the showers there, and I had to. At that time, we weren't in cells.